the national anthem, the flag, and why you should stand. Welcome to Hide and Seek Media. Hey guys, thanks for tuning into the channel. If this is your first time here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified anytime I drop a new video. Smash that like button, hit the share button so other people can see this content, and let's get into this. Today's video is about the national anthem, the flag, and why you should stand in respect. So, I know there's a lot of controversy over the national anthem, the flag, and you know, taking a knee and disrespecting the flag versus protesting and the right to protest and all that. Look, I get it. You want to protest, you want to, you have a grievance about the country. You have every right to say that, right? But, you know, and I'll just use professional athletes as an example because that's the most spotlighted time that, you know, this happens, right? But you are a professional athlete, you know, somebody like, you know, Colin Kaepernick, let's say, the most famous of the people who, you know, encompass this topic. You could have easily just picked up the phone and called a number of news outlets and said, I want to have a press conference to talk about systemic racism in America and what needs to be done about it. I know it doesn't make as big of a statement as taking a knee for the national anthem, but you're still getting your voice out there. Millions of people follow you on Twitter and Instagram. You could easily use those platforms as well. Using the national anthem as a platform, while I agree it is your right, I have to disagree in the fact that I think it's okay. I disagree with it because I know the story about the national anthem, how it came to be at our national anthem, you know, and the inspiration behind the poem that was written, you know, that pretty much embodies and encompasses what it means to be an American, right? So, for those of you who don't know, we're going to do a little history lesson today. Now, you are more than welcome to fact check me and leave the comment down below and let me know what facts I got wrong. I will list the sources in the comments below, so like I said, go ahead and fact check me. I'm more than welcome to correct any corrections or any mistakes I may have made. But let's kind of break this down, right? So this all goes back to the War of 1812, and a lot of people kind of get misconstrued about where the national anthem came from and what it, you know, what battle it's representing and whatever. A lot of people think it's the Revolutionary War, and that's completely incorrect. This poem was inspired and written based on a battle in the War of 1812, probably one of the most pivotal battles in the War of 1812. Alright, so like I said, for those of you who don't know, the War of 1812 was the American colonies had established itself as a country, but Great Britain, right, hadn't acknowledged us as a country and wasn't going to. And in fact, we're blocking trade routes in and out of the American colonies, which was hurting trade. So in August of 1812, I believe it was, the American colonies declared war on England. But England was enthralled in a bigger battle. They were dealing with Napoleon at the time, so they weren't really bothered with this pesky group of traders, you know, in the New World that thought they could, you know, create their own country. So England focused its main war efforts on Napoleon until I think it was June of 1814. Let me see if I want to say it was somewhere around June of 1814. Napoleon surrenders, right? England wins and now can focus on the American colonies. So, in August of 1814, General Ross of the British Army marches in and sacks Washington, D.C., setting the White House ablaze and landing a major blow to the American Army, right? I mean, that has to be pretty demoralizing to see your capital, your country's capital, up in flames, just being torched, right? So, feeling the confidence of their victory, right? I want to say it's Admiral Cochrane. I'm not 100% sure on that. My notes are kind of sketchy on his name, but I believe he was the person in charge of the British fleet there, attacking the American colonies, right? So Admiral Cochrane and General Ross get together and they decide, hey, we've sacked Washington, D.C., and this was pretty easy. Let's go ahead and let's head down to Baltimore and see if we can take down Baltimore, right? At this time, Baltimore is the third largest city in the American colonies and is their major hub for shipbuilding and, you know, one of the major harbors and ports for the American colonies. So it'd be a major win for the British if they could take Baltimore too. So they sail down in, and you know, as they're approaching Baltimore, General Ross gets this idea that that they need to, you know, attack Baltimore on two fronts, from the sea and from the land, right? So he wants to land troops once they get close enough and march his troops into Baltimore, you know, on a surprise attack, and while the Navy, you know, ships attack from the harbor, right? So this is their plan, right? They're gonna sail down to Baltimore, deploy their infantry, march them up, attack from one side while the Navy hammers the city. Well, in the port of Baltimore, and on the far end of the peninsula, is Fort McHenry, right? And now this is the British fleet have to get past Fort McHenry before they can even lay a finger on Baltimore, right? The problem with getting to Fort McHenry is that a lot of the water there was shallow. There was a lot of shallow water there. So they had a lot of things, you know, where these big British warships couldn't really get in. Plus they had like a big long chain that ran all the way across the harbor, so they couldn't really get in close, right? So they had to use mortar ships to attack the fort. So where Francis Scott Key comes into play is he hears that one of his friends was detained on one of these ships headed towards Baltimore, and so he was asked by the family and friends to see if he could secure his release. So Francis Scott Key goes to President Madison at the time and asks if permission to, you know, go aboard one of the British vessel that is holding his friend and try to negotiate the release of his friend. I think his name was Dr. Beans, right? So while Francis Scott Key is, you know, doing this, he's also collecting letters from friends and family members and British soldiers who have received treatment from Dr. Beans during the battles, even though they were wounded and captured or whatever. He still treated them, you know, and so they wrote letters about how well he treated them and all that, right? So this is all evidence that Scott Key was going to take with him, you know, to help negotiate the release of his friend. So he gets to the ship, right, he makes his way, or I'm sorry, let me backtrack here. So he hears from the president, and the president says, yes, I will grant you permission to go negotiate the release of your friend, but I want you to take a prisoner release or a prisoner negotiator with you. And so he sends this man named Skinner with Francis Scott Key to negotiate the release of his friend. And so when they get to the ship, I believe it's the HMS Torrent, or Torment, well, Torrent, I think it was. But when he gets to the ship, he, speaks to the admiral, and they begin negotiations for about a week. Now, this is roughly around September. So this is around September 5th when Francis Scott Key first arrives on the Torrent, and then begins negotiations for the release of his friend. So about a week later, we're about September 13th, he finally gets the release. He finally gets, the negotiations come to a close. They've come to an agreement, and his friend is going to be released. So at this point, Skinner, Beans, and Scott Key are all ready to leave the ship. But while they were on the ship, they overheard the admiral and the other commanders of the other ships talking about how they were going to attack Fort McHenry and Baltimore. And so, worried that they may relay this information to the American Army, the admiral detained the three and ordered them to be moved to another ship, which I believe was called the HMS Surprise. And this is where Francis Scott Key witnessed the battle that would soon take place on Fort McHenry. Right? So what Francis Scott Key and Skinner overheard was the plan for them to deploy the ground soldiers and try to attack the fort from one side and distract the soldiers within, so that they could move the ships in close, their big warships with all the cannons, right? They needed to move them in close enough to fire on the fort. So to do that, they needed to distract the men inside so that they couldn't fire the cannons back on those ships and force them back, right? Because they'd already done this once earlier on. So the battle begins at 6 o'clock in the morning on September 13th, and the British move in their big warships and try to get as close as they can and get into range so that they can attack the fort. So they get them into position and they start shooting at the fort. But the fort has well-placed guns, and the Americans are deadly accurate with their cannon shots, and those heavy warships sustain devastating damage in the first hour of attack. So they have to move back, and the British are forced to use mortar rounds and rockets to attack the fort, right? So in the British fleet at this time, they only had 8 ships with mortar capabilities in the entire British Navy, okay, which was the largest navy on the face of the earth. Okay, we're talking 1814 here, right? So yes, the British Navy was the largest navy on the planet at this time, and they only had 8 ships with mortar capabilities. 5 of those ships were at Baltimore Harbor attacking Fort McHenry. So they move the mortar ships into range and they start pummeling the fort, just hammering it. All the while, Francis Scott Key is watching this from the HMS Surprise, along with his friend Dr. Beans and Skinner. Now, when they were being transferred, it's so it's been said. I can't find any actual documentation of this, but when they were being transferred, it was said that the British gave the Americans an ultimatum. Basically lower the flag, raise a white flag, and surrender, and no harm will come to the fort, right? Well, of course, the Americans didn't do it, so the British pummeled the fort. Just bam, 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 hour after hour after hour, right? And so this attack goes on for 25 hours. Just boom, boom, rockets being fired, bombs exploding, 1,500 mortar rounds, 10-inch, 13-inch mortar rounds were fired at Fort McHenry during this battle. Now, luckily, only 4 or 5 people were actually killed. 130 or 140 were actually injured, but only 4 or 5 people were actually killed during this attack, which is amazing if you actually think about it, considering how many bombs and rockets were actually fired at this fort during this 25-hour-long battle, right? And so Francis Scott Key is sitting on this ship, the HMS Surprise, and he's watching this, and he's just watching it happen, and there's nothing he can do about it, right? He can't go in and warn the people. He can't do anything about it, and for all he knows, everybody in that fort is just annihilated, right? And so he keeps looking for the flag. He keeps watching for the flag because he remembers what he was told, right? He remembers if they just lower the flag, they'll stop, but they never see that flag lowered, right? And so you listen to the words of that song, and it kind of starts to ring a little true, like it starts to mean something a little different. When you actually know the story that he sat there and watched this brutal attack on an American fort, right? And so they, after 25 hours of shelling the fort, the British commander, or Admiral Cochrane, I believe his name was, he said, this is, they haven't given up. This is, a futile attack, and we're gonna call it and just, retreat. So during that battle, right towards the end, the garrison commander, Major Armistead, right, he had commissioned a woman by the name of Mary Pinkerskill. I think I got that right, Pinkerskill, to sew together 2 new flags for the garrison, or for to be flown over the rampart of the fort when he took command, and it was like a year and a half before, right, before this battle. So she made the 2 flags. One was a smaller flag that was the battle flag, or the storm flag, that was the one that was flying during the battle, because while all of this was going on throughout the entire night, right, of the fort just getting pummeled with all these bombs, they were also getting pummeled by a huge storm that had blown in, and it was just massive rain and winds just pummeling, the fort, along with all of this, all of these bombs and everything going off, right? So that flag, that storm flag, had been flying over the rampart all through the battle, and it was battered and torn, but it was still up there, right? And so as the shelling started to slow down, and it started to get fewer and fewer, and the span between each bomb was starting to grow, and the commander, Major Armistead, right, he decided, let's pull down that storm flag and let's raise this 30 by 42 foot pristine, beautiful American flag over the rampart, so that when dawn comes up over the hill, and you can see through the mist, when you can see the flag, right, when dawn comes up and you can see the flag, all those people, all those British sailors and all those British infantrymen and all those, you know, Americans will all see this big, gigantic flag. I'm talking stars that are 2 feet in diameter, all right? Huge flag just waving proudly in the wind, untouched, pristine. Like, you guys couldn't hit the broadside of a barn if you tried in broad daylight, right? Like, we will not go quietly. We will not surrender. This is our country, and we will die for it. We will die for our beliefs. We will die for our freedoms. We will not surrender. That's what that said. That big giant, you know, big giant flag said, we will not go quietly into the night. This is our country. We're here to stay. And you know, so that's what Francis Scott Key is describing in part of that song, you know. You have to think about what those people were willing to go through, right? The terror and the not knowing if one of those bombs was going to kill you or not, and just over and over and over and over all night, every hour, just bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb, right? All to annihilate your beliefs, your freedoms, to take away your freedoms, to take away what you believe to be right. They were willing to die for it, to stand firm and die for what they believed in. And that's really the epitome of the American, right? I know George Washington is accredited for saying this, but I'm not 100% sure on that either. But, you know, he says the greatest thing about the American Christian is that he would rather die on his feet than live on his knees. Now, I don't know if George Washington actually said that or not, but it's a pretty damn cool saying, and it pretty much does epitomize what I believe is the essence of being an American, right? Is that these freedoms mean more to me than anything else. I challenge you to show me a better country in which you have all the freedoms you have here in America. I challenge you. Leave it down in the comments. So, if you've made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and notification bell so you get notified anytime I drop a new video. Smash that like button. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this video and the topic. Share this video so other people can see this content, and I will catch y'all later.